Ask yourself one question. If someone asked you right now at this very moment, why does humanity exist? What would your answer be? Because we are intelligent? Because we built tools? Because we discovered fire? No. Humanity exists because 66 million years ago, a tiny creature the size of your fist closed its eyes, pulled its knees to its chest, buried itself inside a small crack of dark earth, and held its breath. Outside there was fire. Outside there was darkness. Outside the world was ending. And that tiny creature survived. This is the story of that small creature. This is the story of a journey where the most hunted things on earth became the most fearsome hunters, where the weak inherited the throne, where nature tore up its entire script and rewrote it from scratch. This is not just the story of dinosaurs going extinct. This is the story of what came after. When an empty throne sat waiting, and the entire world went to war to claim it. And that war was not just fought between animals, it was fought between mountains, between oceans, between atmospheres, between winds that were sometimes burning hot, sometimes freezing cold, sometimes filled with poison. So let us go 66 million years back, to the moment when the world stood at the edge of its greatest reset. Think about that day, 66 million years ago. The place that is today Montana, America, was an entirely different world. The sky was blue, the land was green, the air was warm and thick with moisture. And then something happened. A 10-kilometer wide rock that had been traveling through space for millions of years finally reached its destination. And that destination was the Yucatan Peninsula, Mexico. The impact was so violent that if you had been standing on the moon at that moment, you would have seen the flash. In a single second, the energy released was equivalent to 10 billion atomic bombs. The ground split open. The oceans reversed, and fire wrapped itself around the entire world. But here is the strange thing. The biggest killer of that day was not the fire. It was the silence that came after. When the asteroid tore through the Earth, billions of tons of rock were instantly vaporized. That matter shot upward to the very edge of the atmosphere. And there, in the cold of space, that molten rock transformed into tiny microscopic glass beads, trillions of them. And then gravity did its work. All of it came falling back down. The sky turned red, then crimson, then so intensely hot that the atmosphere itself became a giant oven. Surface temperatures across the planet reached hundreds of degrees Celsius. Forests that had been green and lush burst into flames spontaneously, without a single spark, without a single lightning bolt, just from the heat pouring down from the sky above. North America, South America, Europe, Asia, every continent burning at once. And in those flames, the creatures that had ruled this earth for 150 million years, one by one, beneath that burning sky, fell silent. Tyrannosaurus Rex. The creature that once made the ground shake beneath its feet. The creature whose single roar could silence an entire jungle. Silent. But this was only the beginning. Because nature had not yet deployed its cruelest weapon. When the fire died down, the world thought the worst was over. It was not. The fires left behind something. Billions of tons of smoke, ash, and sulfur dust. All of it dissolved into the atmosphere, spreading like a thick black blanket across the entire surface of the Earth. The sun. That single star that had been powering this planet for 4.5 billion years. Whose light had fueled photosynthesis, whose warmth had kept the oceans from freezing. Its switch was turned off. Not for weeks. Not for months. For years. The sky went pitch black. Temperatures began to plummet. Regions that had once been tropical began to freeze. Snow fell at the equator. And when photosynthesis stopped, the entire food chain of the world began collapsing like a line of dominoes. First, the plants died. Then the plant-eating dinosaurs starved. Then the great predators that hunted them starved too. The T-Rex that once weighed 6 to 7 tons, that once needed hundreds of kilograms of meat every single day, had no prey left to find. It too fell, hungry and broken. On the same ground where once its name alone had made entire jungles go still. Nature drew a line. A cold, brutal, mathematical line. Any terrestrial creature weighing more than 25 kilograms had no right to survive. Size, which had once been the ultimate symbol of power, had now become a death warrant. But deep underground, in the darkness, a small creature was still alive, holding its breath, eyes closed. Our ancestor. Think about this question carefully. Tyrannosaurus rex went extinct. Triceratops went extinct. Brachiosaurus went extinct. The largest, most powerful creatures of 150 million years of dominance, gone. But fish survived. Turtles survived. Crocodiles survived. Why? This was not luck. This was biology. This was physics. This was chemistry working at the deepest levels of life. Crocodiles and turtles possessed a mechanism that dinosaurs never had. They could lower their metabolism to almost zero. They did not need a stable temperature environment. They did not need to hunt every single day to stay alive. When darkness came and cold arrived, they simply sank deep into the mud at the bottom of rivers and lakes. They entered a state of deep hibernation. Their biological engines shut down completely. Only a faint heartbeat remained. Only the thinnest pulse of life. And freshwater food chains operated differently from land-based ones. There were no living plants. There was no sunlight reaching the depths. But there was organic detritus, dead plant matter, rotting wood, and the carcasses of millions of dinosaurs washing in from the land. For a crocodile lying still in the deep mud, those carcasses were not tragedy. They were a feast. Enough to sustain an entire lineage for years on end. But even more important than the reptiles hiding in freshwater were the ones hiding beneath the earth. Our ancestors. Purgatorius. A small primate like mammal, slightly larger than a squirrel, covered in warm fur, large eyes built for seeing in total darkness. It lived underground. And it ate anything. Seeds, insects, roots. The things that a T-Rex would not even glance at became the very foundation of its survival. And most critically, it reproduced quickly. Which meant it could evolve quickly. Nature had delivered its verdict. A new chapter was about to begin. Think about the moment when sunlight touched the earth again for the first time. After years of darkness. Ferns came first, those tough little plants whose spores had survived beneath the ash waiting. This was the signal that Earth had stopped dying. And when the light returned, when the plants began growing again, our tiny mammal ancestors poked their heads out of their burrows for the first time. And what they saw was something worth pausing to understand. No T-Rex, no Velociraptor, no giant predator waiting to consume them. The prison that had held their kind for 150 million years had swung wide open. The world was empty. And nature has one rule that has never changed in 4.5 billion years. A vacuum always fills itself. Whenever an ecological vacuum appears, nature immediately begins building new monsters to fill it. And now mammals had the entire world available to them. No barriers, no boundaries, no limits, only a wild and completely open evolutionary race to decide who the new king would be. And in that race, everything was permitted. For the first 10 million years after the extinction, our ancestors were still running. Because nature had played a twist. Remember those small feathered dinosaurs that survived the asteroid? The ones that ate seeds, the ones that could fly. One branch of them came down to the ground. They folded their wings. Their ability to fly was abandoned. Now all their biological energy poured into one purpose: size, muscle, and a devastating weapon that had no equal on land. Gastornis, Forus racidae, terror birds. Imagine a modern ostrich, but 2.5 meters tall, 300 kilograms, and completely carnivorous. They had no teeth. They did not need them. Nature gave them something more terrifying than teeth: a giant keratin beak, curved like a battle axe, razor-sharp, nearly unbreakable. Biomechanical studies have shown that a single downward strike from a terror bird's beak could crush the skull of a prehistoric horse the way you crack an egg. And they could run at 60 kilometers per hour. For our tiny mammal ancestors, the ground was a minefield. The sky brought no danger, but on the land these feathered giants treated everything smaller than themselves as an appetizer. But terror birds were only one threat. The second threat came from the water. Approximately 60 million years ago, Earth looked nothing like the world we know today. Global temperatures were extraordinarily high. The entire planet was functioning like a massive greenhouse. Tropical forests stretched all the way to the polar regions. Average temperatures at the equator regularly exceeded 35 degrees Celsius. And in that heat, for cold-blooded reptiles, it was nature's version of steroids. Deep in the tropical swamp forests of what is now Colombia, something was moving through the water. Titanoboa, the largest anaconda alive today, reaches about 6 meters in length, around 200 kilograms in weight. Now double that length. Now multiply that weight by 6. Titanoboa. 13 meters long, the length of an American school bus, a body as thick as an oil drum, weighing over 1.1 tons. Its massive size made it slow and clumsy on land. But in the water? In the water it was a ghost of death that nothing could escape. Titanoboa specialized in hunting giant crocodiles. It carried no venom. It killed through pressure. Raw, primal, unstoppable pressure. When this 1-ton snake coiled itself around the body of a crocodile, the constriction force exceeded 400 pounds per square inch. Imagine the entire weight of the Brooklyn Bridge pressing down on your chest. That is what Titanoboa's prey experienced in its final moments. Ribs shattered. The circulatory system collapsed completely. And then silence. The prehistoric Amazon was an arena with no safe corners. Terror birds on the land. Titanoboa in the water. For our ancestors, there was nowhere to hide that guaranteed survival. But mammals carried something that none of these giants possessed: evolutionary flexibility. And this is where the most extraordinary race in the history of life on Earth truly begins. When ecological pressure increases, the speed of evolution accelerates. And for mammals, pressure was coming from every direction simultaneously. Terror birds from above on the land, giant snakes in the water, monsters in every swamp and river. So nature gave mammals a gift. And that gift was specialization. Their teeth began to change. Their jaws were completely redesigned. At the front, canines grew longer and sharper for tearing meat. At the back, molars evolved into complex grinding surfaces for processing leaves and roots with maximum efficiency. Mammals began diversifying at a rate that had never been seen before, filling every ecological niche that the dinosaurs had left behind. And their size began inflating at an incredible rate. Uintatherium, a herbivore as large as a fully grown rhinoceros, 6 strange horns protruding from its face, 2 enormous tusks despite the fact that it ate only plants. An animal that looked like nature was running 3 separate experiments simultaneously and forgot to separate them. Embolitherium, a giant creature carrying a massive bony battering ram on its nose. Scientists still debate what that structure was truly for. Perhaps male competition. Perhaps predator defense. Or perhaps nature was simply experimenting without concern for logic. And then the carnivores arrived. Real mammal carnivores unlike anything the world had produced before. Androsarchus, the largest terrestrial mammalian carnivore ever documented in Earth's fossil record. It had the appearance of a monstrous fusion between a giant wolf and an armored wild boar. 4 meters in length, jaws powerful enough to crush turtle shells as though they were dried leaves. This was the creature that made the world realize for the first time that mammals were not content being prey. They were coming for the throne, but dominating the land was not enough. Because the ambition of mammals recognized no boundaries. Approximately 50 million years ago, picture this scene. Along the coastline of what is today Pakistan, a 4-legged mammal, Pachycetus, about the size of a wolf, a land-dwelling creature. It stood at the edge of the water, and for the first time, it waded in. To catch fish, that single moment would change history in ways nothing else could. Thousands of generations later, the legs of its descendants had transformed into fins. Their bodies had elongated. A thick layer of blubber had developed for warmth in cold water. And one day, they abandoned the land entirely. They entered the ocean. Forever. We know those creatures today as whales and dolphins. Think about what that means for a moment. The creature that once hid in the dirt, trembling from the footsteps of predators, whose ancestors cowered in dark burrows during the worst extinction event in Earth's history. That creature's descendants became the largest animals to ever exist on this planet. The blue whale, the biggest creature in 4.5 billion years of life on Earth, is a mammal. This was not just evolution, this was a revolution. Mammals had conquered the land. They took to the skies through bats. And they descended into the deepest reaches of the ocean through whales. No boundary could hold them. No environment was beyond their reach. But nature had one final test remaining. The hardest test of all. Millions of years passed. And Earth's mood changed completely. The Indian subcontinent collided with Asia. The Himalayas were thrust into the sky. Massive amounts of carbon dioxide were pulled from the atmosphere through erosion. The Isthmus of Panama rose from the seafloor, severing the equatorial currents that had carried warmth around the globe. Earth's planetary heating system was shut down. The Ice Age began. The Pleistocene. Most of Canada and the northern United States was consumed by the Laurentide ice sheet. 3 kilometers thick, so enormously heavy that the solid bedrock beneath it bent under the weight. Temperatures dropped to levels that could freeze the body of any creature that failed to adapt in time. But for mammals, this was not suffering. This was a forge. A fundamental physical law governed survival in this world. The larger the body, the smaller the surface area relative to total volume, and the better the creature retained heat. The Ice Age was essentially nature issuing an invitation: grow larger, grow stronger, or disappear. And mammals accepted that invitation without hesitation. On the North American continent, a golden era unlike anything before it was beginning. The age of megafauna. Picture this world. From Alaska all the way down to the Great Plains, the ground shook beneath the footsteps of the Columbian mammoth. Standing 4 meters at the shoulder, weighing 10 full tons, carrying tusks that curved 4 meters outward and were used like biological snowplows to sweep down to the frozen grass beneath. These were among the most imposing land animals to ever walk this earth. But where oversized prey exists, nature forges the killers to match them. Smilodon, the saber-toothed tiger. This creature was not built for speed the way a modern cheetah is. It was not designed to outrun anything. It was designed for something far more brutal. It was built to wrestle, to pin, and then to finish. The muscles of its forelegs were so extraordinarily powerful that it could pin a juvenile mammoth to the frozen ground through sheer physical force. And then those canines, 20 centimeters long, thin and sharp as machete blades. One precise strike to the throat. The aorta and trachea severed simultaneously, the hunt complete. But even Smilodon had something to fear. Arctodus. The giant short-faced bear. Standing upright on its hind legs, it reached nearly 4 meters. It could look directly into the second-floor window of a modern building. The largest terrestrial carnivore to ever exist in North America, capable of running at 60 kilometers per hour. And here is what made it truly terrifying. It rarely needed to hunt at all. It would simply catch the scent of blood from kilometers away, rush in at full speed, and any pack of wolves, any group of Smilodons, any other predator at a kill site would abandon their meal immediately. Because fighting Arctodus was not a fight anyone could win. In this world, muscle was everything. Claws were everything. Size was everything. And then something arrived that had none of those things. No thick fur, no massive claws, no enormous body built for combat, but it carried something that this entire 66-million-year story had never seen before. Something that no creature in 4.5 billion years of life on Earth had ever possessed in this form. Between 15,000 and 20,000 years ago, sea levels dropped significantly because so much water was locked away in polar ice. A strip of land was revealed connecting Asia and Alaska, the Beringia Land Bridge. And across it, from the steppes of Eurasia, a group of creatures entered North America. They walked upright on 2 legs. They were lean. They were physically weak by any measure of this world. Slower than every predator, weaker than every prey animal of significant size. By every ecological standard that had governed survival for millions of years, they should have gone extinct within their first winter on this continent. They did not. Because they carried a light that no creature before them had ever been able to touch or control. Abstract thought. Language. Long-range planning. Cooperation. And fire. Our ancestors did not wait millions of years for thick fur to evolve. They killed other animals and wore their skins. They did not wait hundreds of thousands of years for fangs and claws to grow. They split flint and shaped it into Clovis spearheads. Weapons so precisely crafted that modern engineers still study their geometry. And they developed a hunting strategy that this world had never encountered before and had no defense against. They did not hunt through speed. They hunted through coordination. They tracked mammoth herds for days without rest. They used fire to drive entire herds toward cliff edges. They maneuvered giant animals into tar pits where 6-ton creatures became completely helpless. They pursued single targets relentlessly until exhaustion brought them down. For the first time in the entire history of evolution on this planet, survival of the fittest did not mean physical fitness. It meant intelligence. When humans entered North America, in what amounts to the blink of an eye in geological time, over 70% of the continent's megafauna was gone forever. The Columbian mammoth, gone. The woolly mammoth, gone. Smilodon, gone. Arctodus, gone. The terrorbirds, gone. All of them had survived ice sheets kilometers thick. Volcanic eruptions, shifting climates, centuries of famine. But they could not survive a 60-kilogram creature carrying a sharpened piece of rock and a plan. The last woolly mammoth drew its final breath on Wrangel Island approximately 4,000 years ago. At that exact moment, the Egyptians were constructing the Great Pyramids at Giza. The Indus Valley civilization was at its peak. The Bronze Age was reshaping human society. And the last remnant of the greatest megafauna empire North America had ever known quietly disappeared from the earth. The tiny trembling creature that had held its breath in a dark underground burrow while the world burned above it 66 million years earlier. Its descendants now stood as the undisputed rulers of every continent on the planet. 66 million years. One single thread running through all of it, and one lesson that repeats itself without exception. When the T-Rex ruled the world, no living thing could have imagined it ending. When terror birds patrolled the land, our tiny ancestors were simply items on a menu. When Titanoboa moved through the swamps, approaching water meant death. When Smilodon and Arctodus dominated North America, safety was a myth. And then everything changed. Every single time, nature operates by one rule that it has never broken. The king of today is the fossil of tomorrow. The hunted of today is the ruler of tomorrow. But our story carries a twist that no previous chapter in this history contained. We are the first creatures in 4.5 billion years of life on this planet to deliberately attempt to understand the rules of nature and work around them. We are the only species that has written books about its own potential extinction, studied its own evolutionary history, and made plans for its own future. But with that comes a weight that no previous king ever had to carry. Mammoths died because the atmosphere changed. The giants of the Carboniferous died because oxygen levels shifted. The mammoth steppe collapsed because humidity crept in where dryness had sustained an empire. And today, we are the ones changing our own atmosphere. Scientists have calculated that if that asteroid had struck just 30 seconds earlier or later, the rotation of the Earth would have placed it over deep Pacific Ocean water, instead of the shallow sulfur-rich shelf of the Yucatan. No toxic cloud, no nuclear winter, no biological reset. Dinosaurs would still be kings, and our ancestors would still be trembling in dark burrows, never having been given their moment. We are an accident. A beautiful, statistically improbable, cosmically unlikely accident. And the only creatures in the known universe who understand exactly how fragile that accident was. So the next time you stand outside at night and look up at those stars burning in the darkness, consider this. Somewhere out there, in some other solar system, another 10-kilometer rock might be moving toward another blue planet right now. And on that planet there might be something small and frightened and overlooked, hiding in the dark. And it might be about to get its turn. This was the story of a journey. The journey from a trembling, starving, overlooked creature to the rulers of an entire planet. The story of what happens when the weak refuse to accept that weakness is permanent. The story of how nature stripped away every crown it had ever given, reset every hierarchy it had ever built, and handed a blank world to the ones who deserved it least on paper. And what those unlikely winners did with it was more extraordinary than anything the giants before them had ever achieved. If this journey stirred something in you, if somewhere in this story you recognized something of yourself, then this is the channel you stay with. Because this is not just the history of animals. This is the history of survival itself. And there are many more chapters still to be written.